When I was about 15, 8 years ago, I had a few eerie encounters with my dad's friend. My dad was abusive growing up and on drugs pretty heavily. My dad was doing some renovations on our back porch and had his friend helping him out. The first time I met him, his vibes were immediately off-putting. He had a little boy about 5 years of age. His wife stayed home a lot and he didn't work much. After meeting me, he kept asking my dad if I could babysit his son so his wife and him could go out on a date night. I reluctantly agreed after being asked more than a few times. The night of babysitting his son, everything was fine until he returned home. He sat on his couch and asked me about the night. He then kept offering me to sit on his lap. I kept declining. I lived a few blocks away, so I decided to walk home. He kept attempting to find ways to get me to stay. He asked if I wanted to stay and play with his son, but I grew more uncomfortable. I finally walked home and told my dad about it. He brushed it off. He also tried to constantly hug me, and one time, he sat next to me on my couch while he came over and tried to put his hand on my leg. His friend continued to come over to help my dad on his renovations. He started to make comments about how I am mature for my age and I have a womanly figure. He constantly stared at me and began to stop by more frequently. I lived in a small town that was pretty safe. The town graveyard was huge and had a lot of trails. It was also literally in my backyard behind my fence line. I'd walk my chihuahua there every day. He lived right across the street from the entrance of the graveyard. One day, as usual, I was walking my dog. I usually put in my earbuds and listen to music. A particular part of the trail was secluded with trees and pretty hidden. I was always observant and paranoid, so I'd frequently check my surroundings. As I was walking through the secluded area, his truck was slowly creeping behind me. I took my earbuds out and quickened my pace. He sped up, coming to a stop and rolling down his window. He then proceeded to tell me that he was going to the store and he could take me home afterwards if I went with him. He also mentioned that he knows my dad, so I was safe. I told him that I was headed home and I didn't need a ride. He was persistent and kept saying that my little dog was tired from walking and it'd be a quick stop to the store, which was all the way on the other side of town. After a while, he was agitated that I said no and finally drove off. I heard a few months later that he went to jail for beating his wife with a hammer and strangling her. She apparently divorced him and he broke into her house and tried to kill her. My dad believed me about everything that happened and he was so upset. He finally cut him off, haven't seen the guy since. I still think about it from time to time, and I'm grateful that I wasn't harmed by him. It was summer break, and my family and I didn't go on any trip, unlike every break. I was just 8 years old and my younger sister was 3. We were playing along with other kids who lived in the same building as us, just on different floors. The building is not exactly an apartment building, it's more of a multi-stored house. The front gate is a bit further from there and the only entrance and exit of the building. So since we were downstairs and playing, anybody who would enter or exit the building would be visible to us, and we greet them because every tenant knows us and we know them, as well as their family members who might visit them. A new person visiting any tenant is rare but not impossible. Right adjacent to the big entrance gate is a small old-style window with grill, but it has a small opening at the bottom. We were all playing, but then I got tired and sat on one of the chairs placed at the porch-like place, not sure what to call it to be honest. From where the window thingy falls on my right side, and I can see it as well as the gate clearly. I was just looking out when I noticed a man staring at the gate. Which looked similar to this. So basically, he was able to look at my sister and my friends through it. It concerned me when I realized that he wasn't even trying to look away and just staring at them blankly. I turned around from where I was sitting to signal my friend to move to the other side away from his sight, which she didn't understand. Frustrated, I turned back and was about to stand up when my gaze fell on the guy and he was now staring at me. My body froze and I could feel fear creeping up on me. I couldn't move, I don't know why. I stared back at him and suddenly he started smiling, and when I say smiling, I mean full-on grinning from ear to ear. That scared the soul out of me, and I mustered up some courage, got up, and ran towards my friends. I didn't tell them anything, and just asked them to go upstairs with me, which thankfully they did without questioning. I didn't tell any about this to my parents because I thought they would stop me from going downstairs to play. The next day, we again came to play, and I looked through the window just to make sure he wasn't there. Fortunately, he wasn't, or so I thought. 15 minutes in, and I spot that guy again. He was again standing at the very spot and staring at us. At me. I tried to play it cool because my friends knew nothing about him, but I couldn't for long and we went back again. From what I remember, this happened for 3 to 4 days, and now my friends started complaining about how I don't let them play and that they have to come back earlier than they are supposed to. On the 5th day or 4th, I don't remember correctly, I made up my mind to not pay attention to him and just focus on playing. We were playing cricket that evening and I was batting. I hit the ball hard, causing it to go over the gate, which is a very normal thing, and as per rules made by us, the one responsible must fetch the ball. My heart started beating because I could see his grin getting wider and creepier. He went towards the ball on the road and picked it up. He then held his hand out, gesturing me to come and take it. I was scared at this point, but I had to go, so I did. As soon as I reached to take the ball from his hand, he bent, coming closer to my ear, and his words are still ringing clear in my ears to this day. "I'm a good man. Look at the window when you go inside. I'll leave something for you." That sent shivers down my spine, and I ran with the speed of light. After we were done playing, I saw him sliding a piece of paper from that little opening. He then looked at me, grinned, and waved goodbye. I grabbed the paper and opened it. He had written his phone number and asked me to call him sharp at 2 in the afternoon, and that he knew my parents would be asleep by that time. It was also written that if I don't do it, my friends' lives would be in danger. As an 8-year-old, didn't know any better. I called him through my mother's phone. He picked up the call, and I didn't have the courage to say anything, so I was silent. He said, "You're a good girl just like me. You should come stay with me. Come outside, I'm waiting to pick you up." Because I lived upstairs, I went to the balcony, and he was actually standing near the gate, looking directly at me, waving and smiling. I couldn't contain it anymore, so I started crying and disconnected the call. I ran inside and bawled my eyes out in the room. Thankfully, my mother didn't wake up, and I cried it all out. I didn't go out for the next few weeks, and everybody kept asking me about it. I still didn't tell them though. That guy stopped coming too. I don't remember the time he stopped coming, but he did, and I was relieved. Eventually, this experience started fading and I grew up. Fast forward to 10 years, I was 18, and my mother asked me to buy some snacks. I took my sister and went out. The shop I had to go to was at the end of the road, several houses away, so not too far. I was standing in a queue when I felt uncomfortable because of the man standing behind me because he kept pushing me. Annoyed, I looked at him, only to realize it was the man. My face went pale, and I could feel my heart throbbing in my throat. I tried not to panic and calmed myself down by telling myself that he couldn't do anything in public. There were tons of people there, and that gave me a sense of security. As soon as my order came, I took out my wallet hastily to pay, but he beat me to it. The owner looked at him weirdly and then at me, because I was a regular there, and he was seeing this man for the first time. I paid for it anyway, and the owner politely asked him to take his money back. I gave the bag to my sister and asked her to go home and to inform our Bob about a man following us. Just in case he attacks, I'll have a backing and she would be safe too. Our house is within the vision range of the shop, so I waited for her to get inside, and now it was my turn to go home. As soon as I stepped out, the man followed me and said something like, "You're a beautiful lady now, let's catch up." I kept walking and walking, but now that we were far from the shop, he started speed walking and I had to walk faster. I could feel goosebumps all over my body. I started running and I could see him catching up to my speed when the owner called for him loudly, saying that some of his money was still at the counter and asking him to come back, which gave me enough time to get inside and lock the gate. I haven't seen him since that day, and it's been 2 years. I'm 20 right now, and I hope to never meet him anywhere in the future. I hope I never see him again, and I don't know why he has still the paranoia in me, and I dread seeing him when I turn 28. When I was a kid, my 2 younger siblings and I stayed the weekend at our grandmother's house while our parents were out of town. My grandma's long-term boyfriend, let's call him Banks, had moved in with her and would be staying the weekend with us as well. The moment I met him, he immediately gave me the creeps. I don't remember much from our first night there, so I assume nothing out of the ordinary happened. That quickly changed the following morning. My grandma announced she'd be leaving us at home with Banks for a bit so she could pick up groceries. As grandma left, my brother, sister, and I sat on the living room couch watching TV. Shortly thereafter, I heard Banks emerge from his bedroom down the hall. I listened closely to Banks' footsteps as he approached and noticed he was more so slowly creeping down the hallway as opposed to walking. I fixated on the doorway where he inevitably appeared, and when he did, he was crouched down, eyes wide and grinning with his hands positioned as he was about to pounce towards us. He began running towards us on the couch, yelling, "I'm the tickle monster," then pounced on my younger sister, aggressively tickling her while kneeling over her on the couch. Banks is over 6 feet tall, muscular build. My sister is below the age of 10. My sister repeatedly asked Banks to stop, exclaiming, "I don't like it, stop that." My sister let out a high-pitched scream and began to hysterically cry. At this point, I intervened. It sounded like Banks was hurting her, and I didn't like that he was continuing to tickle her while she screamed and cried. I tried inserting myself between my sister and Banks and told him to stop. He wouldn't remove his hands from my sister. I began slapping Banks' arm, telling him let go of her, and once he released his grip, I screamed, "Run," to my brother and sister. The only thing I remember feeling and thinking in this moment was, get the away from this man right now. I ran out of the living room down the hallway and into the first bedroom. My sister followed behind me, then my brother, and as I was closing the bedroom door, Banks caught up to us and shoved himself against the door to prevent me from locking it shut. Miraculously, I was able to lock it before he overpowered me. Once my siblings and I were locked in the bedroom, Banks continued to bang on the door while he repeatedly yelled, "I'm the tickle monster, let me in. The tickle monster's coming to get you." Both of my siblings are hysterically crying at this point. I am now overcome with fear of what Banks will do if he manages to gain access to the bedroom. Although I didn't have a phone, I yelled back at him, "If you don't stop, I'm going to call the police." Banks backed off, and I heard him retreat back into his bedroom down the hall and close the door. My siblings and I stayed in the bedroom with the door locked until my grandma returned. Banks remained in his bedroom for the rest of the night. The following morning, Banks left the house, and my grandma said he'd be gone for the day working. That afternoon, my grandma fell asleep on the living room couch, and for whatever reason, I decided to go in their bedroom to snoop around. I went into what appeared to be Banks' nightstand, and I found his personal journal. For the most part, it was filled with nonsense and very detailed drawing depictions of some of the drawings had a bit of satanic undertone, but at the same time, I was too young to recognize and understand what I was looking at. I began quickly flipping through it and landed on a page with big, bold black and red capital letters. It read, "If you die a virgin, do you go to hell?" Below it was a drawing of a prepubescent and nude girl. There were two versions of the girl standing side by side, one where she appears happily smiling, and the other her face is more distorted and confused. Typing this out and re-envisioning, it makes me feel disgusting. I don't know how to emphasize how disturbing it was. I instantly went numb and dropped the journal, ran to the living room, and demanded my grandma to call my parents so I could go home immediately. My sister was ultimately covered in bruises from Banks tickling her. Strange, creepy dude.